Okay. Yeah, I'm going to do that, unless you want. I'm calling to order the Board of Directors meeting of the Granada Community Services District, the regular meeting for Thursday, October 17, 2019. And as usual, we will open with roll call.
Okay, President Huffington.
Here.
Vice President Barbara Ladd.
Here.
Director Jim Blanchard.
Here.
Director Sid Stevens.
Here.
Director Eric Sismon.
Here.
And our General Manager, Chuck Duffy, is here. Our council is absent, and I'm Julia Pino, the General Manager.
Okay, we have general public participation. I haven't received any speaker slips, but if there's anyone who would like to speak on any items not on the agenda, submit a slip after you get through speaking. Please.
My name is Nancy Marsh from El Granada. I have recently gotten connected with the El Granada CERT group, Neighborhood Preparedness Group, and Delia kindly organized for this group to meet here because they were driving to the Half Moon Bay Fire Station once a month. But I just wanted to kind of plant an idea that we could explore what kind of connections the district could make with the Community Emergency Preparedness Group for El Granada. I know Pat is involved with the Miramar group. Michelle Dragony is trying to form a Princeton group because they're basic neighborhood groups. So it wasn't obvious other than having a meeting place and maybe supporting their training with our recreation training where we could connect, but I just wanted to put that connection out there so you guys know that several members of PAC have connections with several of the CERT groups, and if there is a way to connect emergency preparedness for sewers or trash with emergency preparedness, you can contact one of us.
Great. And
Thank you.
CERT does great things.
And having just been through an involuntary blackout,
Drew a lot of attention.
I think that I'd like to agendize this so that we can formally consider how we'd like to participate and whether we can provide, what services we could provide to our community. Okay, I have one announcement. Saturday the 26th is the quarterly recycling event, which is held on Obispo Road across from the end of Avenue Portola by Recology. It's an opportunity to drop off free items that are recyclable, but you wouldn't normally put in your recycling bin because they usually won't fit, like mattresses and box springs and appliances, etc. This is from 8 a.m. till noon. You have to be a resident of our district, El Granada, Miramar, Princeton, or Clipper Ridge, and ID will be required. But it's like I said, it's a really great and useful event. I go every time because things pile up. And so that's Saturday the 26th, right out here.
And I'll make an announcement. We have the Burnham Park workshop meeting October 24th. So that's what, next week, next Thursday?
Yeah.
Next Thursday, doors open at 5. It's going to go from 6 to 9. El Granada School Community Room. Good chance for everybody that wants to participate to get out and have a hands-on role in the workshop. So are we going to talk a little bit more about it tonight? At a high
On the
level?
agenda.
On the agenda, but just since some people just at the beginning just wanted to make that announcement.
Okay. Action agenda item number 1 is consideration of the 2020 Recology rates and services. And we have you're the general manager, right, of Recology of the Coast. Chris Porter is here to address us, tell us what the current situation is in an industry in flux, and take some questions.
Yes, I've been trying to get this on the agenda, and I'm really pleased it's happening. Just so once a year we can talk to Chris and find out what's going on with our service, because I think there's a lot happening in the recycling world these days.
I am Chris Porter, General Manager for Recology of the Coast, and before I start with this, two things that were just mentioned. One, to David, I told Fran that we had always offered to Leonard that we have compost that we can bring to the Burnham Strip once we get going and stuff. So take that into consideration, because that'll be a big expense that you won't have. So we'll take care of that. And number two, when the power was out, was very, very, in my men's words, creepy to pick up the garbage in the morning when there was absolutely no power. If you work on a plan for future power outages, I would love to be included. And because we can probably be helpful too early in the morning. The trucks have big lights on the top, so we could, possibly help you in certain areas. So just consider that when you have your agenda and stuff, that we would love to be, we're part of the community, so we'd love to be part of the solution of looking for things to do if this happens again. And I have a feeling it will happen again.
That's great.
When it happens again, so we'll put it that way. Okay, good news. No rate increase for El Granada this coming year. And why is that? It's kind of an odd situation. We have lost a lot of revenue. At this time last year, we were getting $35 a ton for recycling material. We are now paying $20 a ton to our secondary market for recycling to keep our materials out of the landfill. And this is a corporate-wide decision that Recology has made, that we will not landfill any recycling materials. And this is contrary to some other companies that are landfilling recyclable materials, because in the big picture, it's cheaper. So that is just our corporate decision.
So what exactly happens to our recyclables?
Pardon me?
What happens to our recyclables? You send them to a...
We bring it to a company called Green Waste Recovery, and they're located in San Jose. It has nothing to do with green waste. That's just the name of the company. It took me a while to get that. They have signed a contract with us that states that none of our materials will be landfilled. So they do have their own markets, and they're having to pay. And there still is some redemption value on some items. So they're getting that money and then, compensating for who they're having to pay to take the materials. There are markets, but it costs a lot.
So are they sorting the materials?
They sort. They have a conveyor belt there. They sort material. And one thing that I'm also very proud of is Recology of the Coast, the last calendar year, had absolutely no rejected loads from the landfill. And that's because on the coast side, Pacifica through Miramar, we're very environmentally conscious. My men really do look at the cans when they're picking it up, and all of a sudden you'll get this orange tag that says, no, we can't take it, and we'll get phone calls, why didn't you take it? They'll usually mark why they didn't, but they're vigilant on their end, but the majority of the customers are extremely diligent also to keep the raw materials out of the waste stream. So if your load is rejected, you're paying about $70 a ton. That's a lot of money versus $20. That's a $50 difference. So again, I'm really proud of that fact that we've had no rejected loads, which also is a factor in no rate increase. What I did when I saw this coming down the road was, what can I do to cut expenses because this is coming, the loss of revenue. So what I did was I am trucking the materials myself from Pacifica to San Jose instead of using a second-party trucker. And that's what we were doing before. So we cut that cost out. So we were able to save quite a bit on trucking fees and the rates. And that is why, also with the increase of revenue in Pillar Point Harbor, is what kept Granada from having any type of rate increase. So the commercial side always balances out the residential side. So that is the main reason why there is no rate increase this year. I'm kind of proud, I'm a little bit proud of that because
Thank you.
there was a huge loss of revenue. So my guys are starting at 3 a.m. and the same guys that pick up in front of the recycling in front of your house are leaving Pacific at 3 a.m. going down to San Jose when there's no traffic and making a pretty, hour and 20-minute return, and then they'll have their break and everything, and then they'll start on the route.
And then when, like, you had referenced the Chinese national sword situation, is that something that still isn't fully reflected into rates in another year, just because everything hasn't been shaken up enough?
We don't have any control over that. The Chinese national sword is what is causing the $35 a ton revenue go to $20 cost, because they closed markets down. What they did, they didn't completely close the market down, but what they did is make the contamination level so low, it's really, really difficult to send them a bale. I know Green Waste Recovery does still send bales because their material is clean, but that is the problem. And it is definitely a political problem. There are people in China that are dying for the materials because they have no materials to work with. But it's a political situation, and not sticking up for Trump, but it started long before Trump got in office. It was percolating, and this obviously probably hasn't helped, but supposedly that was part of the discussion points when Trump went and when he continues to meet with the government of China, that is one of the situations. Because they're losing out too. They don't have the materials they need, mostly the paper products, to continue their business. So.
Well, it's my understanding that it's really much more important than it used to be that all of the recycled materials be really clean.
Yes.
Even for the place in San Jose, that, in your paper recycling, it should be just really paper. And for cans and bottles, they should be really washed out. And that people need to actually pay more attention to their recycling than they used to have to.
We don't have that problem that much on the coast.
Because people are neat and clean here?
Yes.
Well, that's
I
nice.
know I know other of my constituents have real problems with that. But we've never really had that problem. My counterparts in other cities will tell me, like, people leave like half full jars of mayonnaise and peanut butter and stuff like that, and I always think that's going to bring rodents and stuff. Why would you do that? So I don't know, but we really haven't had that problem. But in our new yearly brochure, we're going to emphasize that again about, please, if you run your dishwasher, put your glass jars in if you can fit them in. Don't do a separate whatever, but do that. But again, that really hasn't been a problem that we've seen, and I'm very thankful for that. We had a meeting, and board member Dye was there, the Mid-Coast Council, and they were talking about AB 1383, which is composting, that all cities are going to, or they were just saying that they really wanted composting. And Granada and Montero, we were able to get exemptions because of self-haul of the gardeners and of composting, home composting. We were able to measure that, and we had documentation and stuff. Well, there will be no more exemptions. So what that means to us in this district, that as of 2024, everyone will, January 1, 2024, everyone will be composting. And
Well,
they're
everyone will be composting through ecology.
composting food, yes, through recology, measurable composting. So by 2022, January 1, 2022, we will have to have an ordinance in place stating that we commit to doing composting, curbside composting, let's put it that way, curbside composting. And curbside composting is a weekly pickup. Anytime you put food in with the green waste, it must be a weekly pickup. So that will change the routes a lot. There will be obviously an additional expense, and Barbara asked me, well, what's that gonna be? And it's really tough to say. It's gonna be a minimum of $2. That's
A
what I'm
month.
gonna say right
$2
there,
per
minimum, a month.
So
A
you
minimum.
need double the trucks, because instead of coming every other week, they're coming every week?
We will have to have one truck that'll be dedicated strictly to compost. So we're gonna need another truck, we're gonna have to have another half driver that is more fuel, more insurance, more benefits, more everything. So what it will be when we start, I don't know, I can't say. You know, fuel's been so strange the last 5 years, I can't even begin to tell you what it's gonna be. But I can tell you that right now, to process composting is about 3 times more than to landfill green waste. And it's because of all the mechanics that go into processing the composting.
And you have a composting yard in San Jose, or?
We have one in Gilroy.
Gilroy.
And
So
that's
you
a
send all the,
recology.
because Pacifica's already composting, right?
Yes, yes. So that is one thing that will be going forward, and I talked to Chuck about this just briefly, and my idea to minimize the cost is we're going to have to get together with Montera, and we're going to have to start at the same time, so that we can amortize the cost of the truck over 5 days a week instead of 2.5 days a week, and the wages and everything. So I think the board will have to take testimony and talk amongst yourself and decide, do we want to start next year? Do we want to start, 2022, 23? But by January 2024, we have to start. Now, recology needs about 12 months lead time to start this, because we're going to have to change the routes, we're going to have to get the truck, hire, do quite a lot of different things. And again, this is going to affect the rates, so to pay for all this. So I'm saying, 12-month lead time. So if you said today, we want to start, then it would be next November or to start. But again, I will work with you, any type of seminars or discussions you want to have, I'm available, and we'll, hash it out. And Chuck and I have kind of decided we'll meet with Clemens and get together and get on a schedule and see what the other side is saying too, and bring everyone's concerns together, and then, move forward whatever way the boards are directing us to go. So, you know, we work for you, we work for the citizens, so whatever anyone wants, I just have some prerequisites that I have to meet that I've told. But, you know, any exemptions that we had before, we're not gonna be able to carry forward, so.
Thank you.
So at the, at the household, I want to make sure everybody's clear on this. At the household level, people will then be putting food waste in with their green waste in the same can, and those cans will be picked up every week.
Every week, and we will go down to just the large can, that will be it. So you have one large can a week.
All right.
And
The same size as the great big one we have.
the great big one, yes. So we'll just keep that can, and that'll be once a week pickup. And there was some discussion that, you know, what if people want a second can or whatever? Well, I like to kind of discuss that on an individual basis, so I urge anyone who really needs that, 355-9000, I live there, so I'm always there. So, you know, call me, and I'm Chris, just leave me a message. I'll get back to you, or send us an email, whatever, we'll discuss it. I'm trying to think, the recycling, well, right now through this year, without the food, right now we've collected about 825 tons of green waste. So that is between Montero and Granada, so together 825 tons. Last year, we collected over 7,000 tons of recycling, clean recycling. So that was good. We, on the coast side, it's just, everything is clean. I can't emphasize that enough. I emphasize that at the meetings that I go to, and my counterparts are astounded at the problems that they go through. And again, for us to have no rejected loads for a whole year, that's unbelievable.
Chris, you've been doing this in Pacifica for some time now, and I don't think it's a slightly different community than here, but I think generally the profiles of what they throw away are probably very close. How much, in terms of volume and weight, does food waste add?
Not that much. I'd say on a regular, somebody that puts out their can every week that's dedicated to food composting, not that just throws, you know, a half a loaf of bread in there, you know, every week. Somebody who's vigilant about it. I'd say maybe in the large can, between 5 and 10 pounds. It's not anything that's huge. And it seems to be cyclical too. In the winter it'll be more. In the summer it's less. I don't know why. But that's the way it is. It's like in the winter the recycling is more, and during the summer it's less. The heavy times for the composting and the green waste too, May through maybe beginning of November, and then the Christmas trees in January. Then there's months where there's hardly anything. Recycling is heavy from Halloween through Valentine's Day. So,
Make candy wrappers.
Yeah, and all those wine bottles.
Yeah.
All right. Well, great.
And so and all that material is processed together. It all goes into one
Yes.
composting
Yes.
process.
yes.
Yeah. This is I'll ask this out of personal interest. Is it necessary to put out your green can with stuff in it? I never send any green waste away currently because I compost everything at home. I never send, and I won't send food waste either because I have a worm composter. Worms eat my garbage. And so I mean, you guys aren't going to come along and say, hey, where's yours?
No, it won't be necessary, but you'll still be charged.
Oh, yeah, I understand
Okay,
that.
you'll still be charged for that because it'll be spread over, you know, the rates will be spread over the amount of customers that we
Yeah.
have.
If, at about 50 cents a week, I am fine with that.
I think, I have to say, I haven't gotten as many calls about it from Granada as I have from Montero. Montero, Moss Beach, I've gotten quite a few calls. Granada, I have not. I think I've maybe got 4 or 5 calls
I
altogether.
know there was a little discussion of it, not, like 6 months ago, with some Granada people, but I think we need to talk about whether we want to ask Montero if they want to do it with us. I was kind of sad that the community council didn't get in touch with us about the topic before taking it up, but I was lucky, I was able to go to the meeting, and, we have that letter. The folks who initiated that were from Montero, but, it sounds as if it's something we have to do sooner, we have to do eventually.
Yeah.
So the question is, do we want to try to start in a year or so to have it happen here, because it is environmentally probably a better thing to do, more responsible thing to do, so.
So have you talked to Montero yet about doing composting?
I'm sorry?
Have you talked yet to Montero about?
I talked to them, and their discussion was the same that I had with Chuck, that Clemens and Chuck and I would get together. I didn't feel the urgency from them to start right away. Pardon? Their rates went up, right, their rates went up, and that was a question at their meeting. Well, why are our rates going up and El Granada is not going up? And the answer is Pillar Point Harbor. That's the answer.
Yeah.
The commercial rates, and you have, I think, 165 commercial customers in El Granada and like 50.
The Harbor District is our biggest.
Yeah, but we have restaurants and stuff too, so, and Pillar Point Harbor is right on the cusp of having a composting program there. We're starting there, food composting. Because commercial customers have a completely different time frame and rationale than residential customers, so,
So they're gonna do it through you?
yes.
Huh, interesting. Didn't know that. Yeah.
So we are trying to decide whether we're going to try to get a small compactor in there and compact it and bring it out that way, because there'll be a lot of fish and kind of gross.
Calamari.
A lot of yeah, exactly. But my operations manager, Mike King, he's been working with them, and we're trying to figure out how we're gonna do it exactly. We've had, preliminary talks. I see it starting out definitely within the next 6 months. So I'll be able to come back and give info on that and how that's going, and,
Great, I think.
Yeah.
Talking about it.
Oh, yes, the 2 districts will have to get together, and so.
So we'll talk in January, and I'll bring a report back and let you know what Montero thinks and whatnot.
Why not till January?
Because that's when Chris said we were gonna talk. Quite honestly.
Their rate application goes through in, their meetings and stuff are at the beginning of January, and I kind of think that they wanted to wait till that part was done, and then we would start, if that is agreeable to everyone.
Well, I guess my feeling is that maybe we should talk about it and decide if we actually are interested. I am. And if so, we should say, let's talk to Montera and see if they're interested as well, without making an absolute commitment tonight to do it.
Hmm.
I mean, is there general, it seems like it's the responsible thing to do, we're gonna have to do it eventually. Let's be good environmental stewards and do it, you know, within reason, within the year that it's gonna take. And it seems like $2 a month is not, if that's more or less, that's an
Well, that's
estimate.
the
I
working
understand.
number right now. Please don't hold me to that. I'm just, you know, again, I have no idea how things are going to change in the next few months. You know,
So
I'm.
pending knowing the specifics of what the cost would be, you know, that we are expressing a general interest in
Yeah.
pursuing this, is that, I don't know, just what
What's
do
the,
people think?
what's the sense of the board? We have consensus that we want our district to participate in food composting?
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I look at it as a cost either way, because we're either composting, we're paying for it, or if not, it's getting mixed in with everything else, and our rates are eventually gonna go up anyways. So it just depends on how you dice it up. You know, I think either way, it's gonna be eventually factored into increased rates, so why not just take it for what it is?
And Jim's on, yeah, I think we have consensus on this. I'd like to see it start January 2021.
Is that possible? If we meet January?
I'd say June 2021. I could say.
And either way, you said we need to get everything together, make that decision, and you guys need a year from when you could start
From
actually composting.
From when we come to consensus. Now, if you want to move forward and Montera doesn't, then that's gonna put the bulk of the costs onto this program.
All right. Well,
So
at this point,
contingent
we're
on
just,
them.
we're
Well,
just
we're
expressing
giving our
interest and
ideas.
we're
Well, and you want to
asking.
get a sense of Montera as
Yes,
well.
we're asking
obviously,
Chuck
yeah.
to meet with Chris and Montera and
Mhm.
determine what they want to do, and then
Right.
if it all works out, yes, as soon as it's reasonable.
So we will,
You
of
want a
course, tell them exactly what you are thinking. And then, you know, see, there are some people on that board that I do know want to start right away. I just don't know if it's a majority.
Start as soon as possible. I mean, no
Yes.
one can start right away, right?
Right,
It's not-
well, let's say, in my mind, I'm saying June of 2021
Is right away.
is that we'll be able to start.
Okay.
Or, you know, maybe a little earlier than that.
All right.
But we'll definitely, Chuck, bring that to Clemens
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
and maybe we should just send him an email.
I'm actually gonna meet him tomorrow.
Oh, okay, why
I'll
don't you
drop in
bring
his
that
ear.
up then,
Yeah.
and, okay, and then we'll, I don't know if he has the final consensus of his board. I do know that there are a couple of board members that are ready to go also.
Right.
So we'll have to see. But whatever, I'm ready to go whenever, you know, I get the direction to go.
It's worth it for $1 a month, right?
$2.
I'm retired.
Keep saying that.
I'm retired, I'm old, I need to retire.
And thank you very much for not raising rates on our
Yes,
residents
yeah.
this year.
Yes.
I think that's
Yeah.
really
Great job,
great that
Chris.
you look at your numbers and are able to do that. So I think a lot of agencies would just say, hey, they can handle it, let's raise their rates a little bit, but it's great that you did, thank you.
We, again, we feel that we're part of the community. I have a couple drivers that live down here. You know, I've been with you guys a long time, so a lot of different boards. So I feel kinship towards the board and the people of this area. I've worked on projects with Fran and, you know, a lot of people on the board, even Leonard. I miss Leonard. I miss him. So, No, I worked on some things with him, and Leonard and I always had a very good working relationship, I have to say that. And, you know, we had a meeting of the minds, so.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. And on behalf of all our residents and ratepayers, thank you again for not raising the rates. Who could have imagined? Any
Thank
more-
you for saying that. Thank you, and thank you for also for being the type of customers that you are in Granada. Really, thank you.
No. Do we have any other questions or comments for Chris? All right, thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Chris. Thank you
Thanks,
very
Chris.
much.
We'll talk soon.
Okay.
All right. Action agenda item number 2, consideration of 2019 Parks and Recreation Community Interest Survey results. And now I'm going to move out of the way.
And Matthew, if we could, we also roll in 13 Parks Advisory Committee report on the back end. Nancy asked me to do that.
Yes.
Oh, okay, sure. That makes sense.
Not just do this
Well, they're over here.
one. The one over here?
It's on this wall right here. Oh. No, that's
That's the closet.
That's the closet. Yeah, turn it on or off?
There we go.
Okay.
Yeah. Almost. Okay. Well, good evening, everybody. I would like to present the results of our 2019 Community Parks and Recreation Interest Survey. Let's see if I can get it going forward here.
Unless Patrick makes it, did you breathe?
I'm hoping it's first. It just keeps going back to the same thing. Yeah, we did that.
Well, if you just aim it that way.
Well, option for me is to get another projector and have Nancy give her presentation. Let me try one more thing.
There you go.
That works. Okay,
Yes.
so we'll try that. All right, so the goals of the research were to provide data to you for future planning of a potential Burnham Park, a small recreation center, and a summer recreation program. We gathered district resident impact input, and in some cases we were able to compare it with the 2015 district survey. The survey was in English, Spanish, and written, as well as online formats. You probably heard some of these things. We pre-tested it, and the length of time, it was about an average 8 minutes. Won't focus anymore, so sorry about that. Okay.
It looks okay compared to that.
It looks okay? All right.
Yeah, it's readable.
We had follow-up flyers in order to maximize the number of responses. Follow-up flyers in town on next-door postings, as well as tabling at El Granada Post Office. We sent out a reminder postcard on September 22nd, and that helped. And then the survey closed October 4th, so relatively short time ago. The responses, we had 483 completed, 25 partial but fully usable. So that gave us our total of 508 responses that you'll see in the survey. That 508 results in about a 26% response rate, which is not bad in this day and age. Gives us 95% confidence level, plus or minus 5% margin of error. The results are accurate. Here's the presentation. I'll go through quickly the survey information. Ooh, boy. I don't know if you can read that. I can read it on mine, so I guess I better tell you. The green there is 80% is El Granada. Miramar is 10%. There's got to be a way to make this.
Oh, yeah.
If you turn it, it'll.
It's great on my computer. Not so much here. I don't know what else to do, folks.
Yeah.
I think it's fine.
You know,
We'll just give a verbal.
We'll just do it, okay. So, most people, 80% were from El Granada. We asked them how long they lived in that neighborhood in the district, and it was a real spread here, but just about 51% had lived here 16 years or longer of the respondents. This one is important. I'm going to take a moment on that. It's saying that we asked people, how many individuals did you have in your household of each one of these age categories? And the one on the red bar on the left, that was a household that had someone who was 0 to 18 years. The middle was 19 to 55, and the orange bar on the right was 56 years and older. The reason I point that out is because we tried to find out if the age range of our respondents was relatively similar to the census, to be able to say that, yes, our results are representative of the population in the area. Because we had different age categories, we weren't exactly able to compare the census with our results. But looking at school enrollments and ages of children in particular categories, and we think it's reasonable. It's reasonably responsive, representative rather, of the population. So we feel good about the results being representative. You know this very well. That's the Burnham Strip, and the red is the Caltran easement, and you can see, I don't have a pointer with me right away, so
I'll point.
you have a pointer.
What do you want to point
I don't
out?
know.
I'll point.
You find out what
Okay.
Oh, you got it, good.
Okay, so there's the parking area that is mostly used by Surfer Beach.
goers.
Let's see if this advancer works. Yes, it does. So going back, that's Surfer Beach parking area right there, the existing lot. And this is the far northern end of the property. There's Surfer Beach down there. So we wanted to ask about a potential community park along the Burnham Strip and how important that was to you and your family. It came out quite strong. There seemed to be a consensus here. 77% said it was important or very important. That's this part of the pie. You can't quite see if that's 10%. It said it was not at all important. When I looked through the results, there was about 8% of the respondents who were opposed to any change. That was just right down the line. No, 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 no. So if we only have 10% opposing the city park, a community park there, that's pretty significant. We asked them about different aspects of their project, of a park in Burnham Strip. The trails were the first one. So we were asking about the type of trail, the covering of the trail. There wasn't a clear consensus of unpaved versus paved, but both of them were acceptable to over 60% of the respondents. So either one of those, the difference was not statistically significant. We also asked about internal trails, paved or unpaved, and internal trails were significantly more interested in unpaved than paved on internal trails. We also asked them about parking alternatives, and here the top was not a big consensus either. A paved parking lot, a gravel parking lot, over 50% of them were okay with either one of them. That means they agreed or strongly agreed that that was acceptable to them. Leave it as it is, the existing dirt lot, only about 30% of the respondents were supportive of that. We asked them about a time limit for parking, and nearly 50% said some kind of limit for parking, time limit would be needed or agreed to. We asked them about the size of a parking lot, potential parking lot there, and this is a clear consensus. Over 72% said the existing size, and so for instance, no parking was only about 12%, no parking lot. So it gives you, I think it gives you some clear directions in some cases. We asked another question about park features, and we gave a whole list of potential park features that were common to other community parks along the coastside and elsewhere, and we asked them to say whether they agreed or disagreed, or their level of interest. They were very interested to not at all interested. And in order to simplify it for this presentation, I broke out a table with all respondents, and then households with youth under 18, and seniors, households with seniors 56 or older. So the results are presented that way. It's going to be really interesting.
They have it in their packet, so.
Yeah, can you read it all?
Page 12 in your
First thing I'd like you to do is just only look at the left-hand column, which is total survey. And the things like ocean views, benches, native vegetation area, restrooms, family picnic area, interpretive signs, skate ramp, skate park, children's playground, and art were the top 10 in terms of interest. All those were supported by over 52% of the respondents on average. And then at the bottom of the list, the least interest was multi-court a small amphitheater stage, half-court basketball, horseshoes, and plaza. But when you split it out between households with children under 18 and households that had individuals 56 and older, we see some interesting differences. The yellow represents a significant difference between the two groups, where the households with 18 and older youth were significantly higher than senior households. And we know that the recreation literature is full of information says those two groups have different recreation needs. And so that's one of the reasons we broke it out that way. But as an example, look at the differences between a skate ramp, a skate park, children's playground. Those are all nearly 70% compared to in the high 40s or low 50s for seniors. Climbing boulders, outdoor showers were more supported, as was a bicycle pump track, the multi-use court, small stage, half-court basketball. The only amenity that was desired more by households with 50 years, 56 and older, was a quiet area. And I think this is pretty telling and has implications throughout all the results. Help explain some of those results. And it's significantly different. Over twice as likely to want a quiet area as a household with kids.
They never have a quiet area.
They don't have a quiet area at home. Would any above ground improvements in Burnham Park impact your view from your house? We had 92% said no, 8% said yes, and I imagine we'll hear from them. Have you ever seen information or heard about the summer recreation program offered by the district? For the last 2 years, we've had a modest summer recreation program, and just have you heard about it? 56% had, but 44% had not. So it does indicate we've got to do better at that, much better at that. There's a lot of room to improve, I think, in that regard. How did you learn, for people who knew about the district, how did you learn about the summer program? Summary of written responses, most heard about it from the newsletter mailer, newspaper, half-a-day review, flyers, and then a number of other sources.
Hey, Pat.
Yes.
Why is the count so low on this?
What's that?
Why is the count so low on this?
Those were the people who at least
People who answered the question?
answered the question and provide. Well, first of all, they were people who knew about the district and then provided an open-ended response. This is open-ended responses rather than closed-ended questions.
Have the open-ended responses where you could do the survey without filling in any of the open-ended responses.
Right.
So they could say yes, but then skip over
Right.
where did you hear it?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, that's this question.
Open-ended responses, yes. So we were asking people about recreation activities that if the district offered them locally, how interested would they be? Again, we provided 3 different columns of data, like you saw in a previous one there. This is a little bit easier to read. Again, if you just look only at the average, which is the column to the left, the total, the most popular were coastal cleanups, CPR and first aid, non-amplified concert, yoga, interpretive history walks, guided nature walks, swimming, art classes, surfing lessons, and rose and movement class. And the least popular, Bridge Club Mahjong, family nature walk in Spanish, and ballroom dancing. So if you look at the top 10, just about 50% of the respondents were interested in those activities. We've got to convert, the district has to convert those at interest into actual signups, but the interest is there. Now, if you look at the other 2 columns to the right of that, almost the majority of activities, there were significant differences between households with kids under 18 and households with 56 and older. I'm not going to go over all of them, but just point out a couple. Surfing lessons was significantly different. Look at swimming, 79% versus 50%. So there are really, really large differences in some of the activities that you wouldn't necessarily think were just family-oriented. The ones that were higher for senior households compared to family households, the biggest ones were walks, history walks, nature walks, and Rose and Moon walks, as well as bridge club. So there are really significant differences, and that's why if you just look at this column, it really hides a lot of interest within the community, differences, different needs within the community. We also wanted to look at a small interest level in a small community recreation center near central El Granada. How important was that to you, and how important would that be to you and your family? And the results here came out fairly significant as well. Nearly 2/3 were very interested or interested in a small community center. Again, there is that 14% who were not at all, did not think at all it was at all important to have one. So 67% agreed it was important or very important. So quite a bit of support there within the community. We asked about community center features, and we provided a list of features and said, would you be interested to not at all interested? The one that got the most interest of any of them was event space and crafts room, a multi-purpose room, a fitness room, a small swimming pool, multi-sport court, small meeting room, basketball court, even childcare got a significant interest level. But if you look at, again, the difference between households with kids and seniors, seniors were more interested in a small meeting room than were kids with younger households. But again, look at some of the big, huge differences between some of these. So for instance, a swimming pool, 73% versus 53%, another significant difference. Just to highlight how big of a difference we have, a basketball court, 59, really 60% versus 40%. So we have different needs and different wants within the community for sure. We asked how often do members of your community, your household rather, travel to parks outside the local area for recreation facilities not provided locally. And not quite 40%, 42% were interested frequently or often they were traveling outside for those recreation activities. And it was interesting, again, looking at the lowest number, only 6% never said they never traveled outside. So if you add occasionally, often, and frequently, that's probably 70%. But just frequently and often was 42%. So people do leave the area for their recreation needs, and I think that fuels some of that interest that we see. Do you feel there are sufficient public park and playground areas within our community was another question. And almost 2/3, 62%, said no. They did not think there were sufficient park and playground areas, whereas 38% said they did. We compared the results from 2015 to 2019, and it wasn't quite comparable because we had a somewhat option in 2015. But if you look at just the no, so in 2019, that somewhat was spread out between these two, I would imagine. So if you just look at the no response, that still over 60% of respondents said in both years said it was not sufficient. All right, then here we broke it out again with households with kids and seniors. And I personally was surprised with the 2019 responses. There was no significant difference between households with youth and households with seniors, even though that's 8%, or roughly 8%. That's not a statistically significant difference, but it still speaks to how much broad support there is in the community, whether you have kids or whether you're a senior household. There's support in the community. 2/3, let's say, are interested in park or playground areas. And we tried to narrow it down to say, well, if this is a small district, if only one park and recreation project could be accomplished by the district in the next 5 years, what would it be? And we only gave them 2 options. That was a small community recreation area, recreation center, excuse me, or Burnham Park in Granada. And 69% were more interested in Burnham Park. So again, gives you some clear direction, but it did surprise me personally that 31% were interested, said that priority should be a small community center. There were no significant differences between households with kids and households with seniors, so that was consistent across the community that Burnham Park was your top choice. So, any questions for me?
Did you have the breakdown of demographics of who responded?
Had the age.
The age of...
Yeah, that was that one that I showed
Okay.
you, the 3 bars. If you want to, I can bring it back. In the back end of your packet there.
Is it in the end of it?
25 in the packet.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
From the best demographic information we could sort out, which is really voter registration rolls and school rolls, you know, our community skews older, so you'd expect more from the older folks, but it doesn't look like the people over 55 were overrepresented. They might have been a little bit underrepresented, and the representation of all the other groups was really, really good.
I ask a question? On page 20, it has the elements, and it looks like the swimming pool got the highest count as very important, but yet on the next page, it's only in the middle, and I'm just wondering how that happened.
Right, the
Part of
very
it is the way
interested
the
and
questions
important.
are asked.
Does it?
Yeah.
Well, the very important and important for swimming pool added up to 59,
Well,
and space added up to 68 total. So it's, you're right, it got the highest,
Very important.
And you add very
Yeah.
important and important together.
So it just looks like it was more important when you look at it on this page.
But then that's in the they want to pay for it.
Yeah, swimming pools are one of the most costly maintenance things you can possibly have in community recreation. So it's, I'm not sure if people fully recognize that, but it is.
Michelle is working very hard for more hours in elementary school.
Nice job. Thank you so much for all your hard work on this. It's a really professional report. We're really lucky to have somebody, have the team that we've had working on this.
Yeah, and getting all these numbers of bar graphs and everything together in this amount of time, thank you.
Yes.
It was about 3 working days.
Who won the gift cards?
Oh, we're gonna do that next.
Oh, are we?
Oh.
Only about 40, I think it's 42 or 3% of the people wanted to give a drive for the gift cards. I'm guessing it's because they wanted to stay anonymous and didn't want to give us their email address.
There you go.
We go, well, Pat, unsets up, I can do the parks report.
Yeah.
First, Claudia's gonna tell you about who won the Spanker's gift cards.
But a very short short uh, announcement here. Claudia Marshall. We had 4 winners because we had 4, and Pat actually stripped out the information from all of the 508 respondents of the survey, and of those, I'm not sure, how many did you get that actually wanted to be part of the Spangler?
I can tell you, I think.
Yes, it was several hundred, yeah. And so we've got 4 winners, one is, and I have already emailed them, and one has already picked up her Spangler gift card. Jennifer Walton, Jonathan Talbert, Sherry Klein, and Janie Mercado Hartnett. There are 4 winners.
Yay.
Which Spangler's donated? Is that?
Oh, they thank you, Spanglers.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Spanglers.
Yes, that would be good. Just a couple of things. We have our November 6th meeting at PAC. I just wanted to put that date out there in case you'd like to come. Sorry. Nancy Marsh, Chair of the Parks Advisory Committee. On our agenda,
Nancy?
yes?
Just for people's information, we're now rolling into item number 13 on our agenda. Thank you.
Correct. So that we can vamoose. On the November 6th meeting, we are really going to dig into the recreation part of the survey, because that's about the time of year we start kicking off planning now with our recreation coordinator for developing the recreation programs and starting to go out and find vendors and so on for summer of 2021. So that would be meaty. We'll be looking for an update on the pump track task force, and I understand David and Paul are meeting at Quarry Park tomorrow to get going, get some movement on that effort. Just a reminder to you all, the Parks Advisory Committee has 2-year terms, and the 2-year terms are up at the end of the year. So I'll remind people at the Parks Advisory Committee meeting that if they would like to roll into another term, they need to send a letter, and if they would not like to, they need to send a letter. We're going to ask those letters to go to Claudia so that she can pull them together as a group and then inform the board on how many people would like to stay on, and of course it's at your pleasure, and whether we'll have openings that need to be filled. So we probably won't schedule our first meeting of the year until after your first meeting of the year, and so that we sort out how many members we have going forward. And that is it, unless there are any questions for the Parks report.
Could you just give a little announcement about the meeting?
Yes. So I think I always think of the survey as an initiative that was a PAC initiative that was proposed and led by PAC. The October 24th workshop was agreed at the board, and PAC members have been supporting it. Barbara reviewed it at our August meeting and got some feedback, including I want to give recognition to Paul, whose idea it was to put grids over the map that people are going to draw on so they can draw things to scale, which looks really cool. You'll see next week. And we asked PAC members if they'd like to volunteer to help facilitate groups, and Pat, Fran, Paul, myself, and Claudia will be available to facilitate the work groups. We met with the Parks Committee, David and Barbara, today to go through the meeting plan. I think I did send to the board the last draft. It's been updated a little bit. I'll send you tomorrow the final draft of the meeting plan and all the materials, but it's basically an hour, 45 minutes of informal time to come, have pizza, have drinks, look at a variety of posters, the survey results, last year's Burnham Park Strip event report out, the concept drawings, the constraint map, just to have some time informally to look at where we've come so far. We're going to ask Steve to present the constraints map in some detail, because the next step is the work groups will divide people into small groups, as many as 6, depends on how many people come. And they will prioritize those things that are on the list, park things that are on the list for the survey, and then based on their priorities, draw them on a map that actually is about 4 feet long and 2 feet wide, and they can draw them to scale. So They can sort out where they'd like them to be, get a sense of how close things are to each other, how much really fits, just as yet another and third wave of input into the park planning. So you'll have the 2018 event, the survey results, and this one, which will be a little bit more detailed. We have one question we're asking them when they prioritize that we haven't asked before, that I think is important, and that's we're asking them to rate each of those things that's on the list of what could be in the park as, I really want this in the park, or I wouldn't really use this, but I don't mind if it's in the park, and basically I object to this being in the park. Because that middle group we haven't tested before. On the survey we said it's important or not important. So it might not have been important to them, but that doesn't mean that they don't want it there. So it's a little different question, a little bit more information going to the board for your then final adjudication on what to advise Kikuchi and Kankel to put in the first real draft. And so we know there will be more community input after this meeting, but it likely would be after the board has a meeting to sort out where to go with the next draft plan.
Nancy, could you just make it real clear for people watching, they are invited, what's the
Yes.
place, what's the time?
Thank you. For the people who are watching, this meeting is on Thursday, October 24th. It's at El Granada School Community Room. The doors will open at 5 o'clock, and we'll have pizza and refreshments. The workshop itself will get organized for that just before 6 p.m. And people will be working for the better part of 2 hours in small groups to help with input into the design and features in the park. And we're committed to getting people out of there by 9 p.m. So everybody in the district is invited to attend. Please, if you would like to attend and you are a member of Nextdoor, please go to the event calendar on Nextdoor and click that you're going, just to help us get a preview count of how many people might be coming. We haven't done this before, so we really don't know how many people to expect.
And why should someone come?
Well,
It's going to be really fun.
Ask the board members whose idea it was.
David.
Why should people come?
I think so they don't have any regrets. Once everything's done, is their chance to voice their opinion and whatever their thoughts are, let us digest that and hopefully become part of the final plan.
I hope between these public efforts and the survey, you always have people when you get right to the plan who say, why didn't I hear anything about this? So I think we're doing our best so that people hear about it and have a chance to get their voice into it.
When I read through these appendixes, does this represent every answer that was submitted in additional comments?
The written comments?
Yeah.
We think so, but we're going to double check.
Okay.
Because there were some people, somebody mentioned that they didn't think their comments were there.
I don't see, I know I wrote something and don't see
Okay.
it. So
We'll
I was
do
wondering
it.
if I could read through all of them, because I felt like there might be some interesting things that,
No, Pat thought he had them all downloaded,
Okay.
but we'll go back and double check.
okay.
Anything else?
Is, in your experience, and maybe this is more toward Pat, the survey and then a public meeting like this, I would think that the results, if not the participation, would parallel, right, the survey and what we get out of this public meeting? No?
I do have a strong opinion about that. Public meetings are not representative typically of the community. They're representative of people who are typically strongly supportive of it or strongly opposed to whatever the topic is. It's that middle ground that you don't often hear from in public meetings. And as we saw from the survey results, there's a lot of middle ground, and for some issues, everybody's supportive. For other things, it's not. So the survey, I would coach you to think about the survey as being reasonably representative of all the members of the community. Those who don't want to get up in front of in public meetings, as an example, are represented in the survey results. Whereas public meetings, public events like this are also very important and very useful because you get a sense of what the big issues are and what the big interest areas are. from people who are really motivated to make it happen or not.
And I think it's interesting too, since we didn't force people to choose and say only select one. You know, like even myself, I strongly support a lot of active rec stuff, but I also supported every single passive. You know, I want to see, you know, art and everything else. So I think there's probably that dichotomy too, where, you know, a lot of people probably the same thing. They had their preferences, but when they went through it, they said, okay, I like that, I like that. So it doesn't, until you force people to make that trade-off and say, okay, you can only choose a couple because of resources and space. And I think that's where this meeting will be good.
It'll be a little different.
That's where that kind of rises to the top and say, okay, we can't do everything. Now fit this in this space, and that's where
I think
those
the
decisions
real
get made.
value of this
Yeah.
meeting is it's a different kind of meeting that will draw a different kind of crowd than the drop-ins and the people who fill out surveys. And so it's just more information and a little bit different information because we're asking the questions a little bit differently. I think that there's a lot of consistency between what we heard a year ago from the people who were handed a blank piece of paper and wrote what they wanted and didn't want and what we see in the survey. And I agree with Pat, the people who come next week with people who have a strong view and a strong motivation to really input. And they may or may not be representative, but you'll learn where the strong views are.
Thank you for that bit of education. I hadn't thought about it that way. Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Both Nancy and Pat have done an enormous amount of work. So we really appreciate it.
Yes,
Absolutely.
we're lucky to have you as resources.
It'll only cost you a little bit to keep us on.
That's on the agenda. All right, we will now go to item number 3, consideration of report from the ad hoc committee regarding partnering with the San Mateo County Harbor District to share office space. And I did ask for this to be on the agenda. Eric and I met with the Harbor District's ad hoc committee again, and I would characterize that as they were still quite eager for us to, I don't know if eager is the word, but they really would like us to figure out ways to coordinate with them and see how the districts can do something better together than two things.
The same we are.
No, they're paying more than we are.
Wow.
Yeah,
Do they-
significantly more.
They have more space?
No.
A little bit, it's a little bit bigger, yeah.
It is?
Yes.
So how come they're paying a lot more?
They have a different agreement. I
Oh.
think
They're month to month.
Hmm?
They came later.
They're month to month.
They're month to month. Interesting.
Yeah,
They came later too, yeah.
right.
Interesting.
And, yeah, it's been
Keep
sort of,
talking.
the
Yeah.
assumption, I guess, it has been that if we wanted a third of the total space, we would pay to build a third of it. Or, I don't,
We're talking a lot of money then, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, which is why I think the other alternative has to remain alive.
Yeah.
So what's, like, at the point that we were interested in buying that parcel, and whatever plans we had, you know, that it's still the same size parcel, so what things have changed as far as from the community center aspect, as far as things that we wanted? You know, what things that, you know, back when that was on the table and we were aggressively looking at that, what things, you know, can't we do or are off the table, or that, you know, I'm just getting back to what other things, even when those discussions were going on, were people talking about besides a community center room?
Well,
for that space.
It's a matter of what is each district willing to pay for? What is the county and the coastal commission willing to allow to be built there? I mean, if we could put up, you know, a 6-story building covering the entire parcel, we could have everything everybody dreams of. But
And we had unlimited money.
and we had unlimited money, and a unicorn walked in that door. But you know, we don't have that, so it's.
I think we were talking about also more about having a community center, which would include many of the uses that were in the survey, rather than just one community room, which, while it's a bit small, we have a community room right now, right here, that gets used by local community groups, so.
Quite a bit, too.
Their needs, David, too.
What's that?
Their staffing needs are much larger than ours.
Yeah.
Because that's not everyone down below, is it?
No, they have another
They
building.
have a whole nother satellite
Yeah,
office.
yeah.
So whereas if we went in there and bought the property and built it, we have 2 or 3 bodies in the office. And
Yeah.
They've
Yeah.
got 15 or whatever the
Yeah.
number is, so they're gonna use a lot more office space than we would have.
And they have
Yeah.
another harbor on the other side, on the bayfront, with more people.
Yeah, so they've got.
Well, but I'm just trying to go, get back to the kind of where things, and I guess one of them is the exterior, kind of the town center that people have presented presentations on in the past. Does it seem like that's something that they're not kind of receptive to, kind of that vision that I know Dan has presented and people like that? It's just no
They-
comment, kind of.
Well,
You just don't know.
as would be normal, they're looking at their own needs first.
Yeah.
And they, they're a countywide district, although they only run the 2 harbors. And so they're just, they're simply, they have to look at their own needs first. That's their responsibility, that their board, so.
The proposals that they showed were building up to the edge of the street or parking. Doesn't mean that they're committed to that, but they didn't propose any kind of, even a setback with some kind of benches or gardens or something. I don't know, so it'd be, I don't know.
Well,
I mean, those initial concepts were maximizing the square footage
Right.
that you could build on the property. Anything they do to lose parking is gonna consequently reduce the square footage.
And that's where I feel like that's kind of.
And that's where.
That's kind of where the first issue, though, in my head, I'm thinking, if this is a big project, if this is our one chance for El Granada to have its last, governmental, center, I would almost think like, the underground parking would almost be like essential, and somewhere, is there other funds from the county, and some of these other sources that if we were all looking this front, working together, most agencies that, like, I feel like if San Mateo County was involved, the underground parking would be an automatic, that would be wouldn't even be questioned. And so I'm just wondering if there's other resources or, if it's just a financial thing, which obviously it is a big cost burden, but if there's ways that they're receptive to it, I feel like that's the first thing, that's kind of the game changer in terms of being able to do more with that property if they're able to commit to that, or if we could go out and, I don't know, what level can we, like, I look at the county stepping up and what they did for the library and what other, what's the next steps? So we're talking with the Harbor District now, but some of these other.
Well, I think we're so far away from making
Yeah.
a decision on the Harbor District property. I don't know that they've even done a space needs assessment.
Yeah.
I don't know that they figured out how many bodies they're gonna put there.
Yeah.
From the sounds of it, they're gonna build as much as they can, and I don't know, there's a lot of community input. So I
Yeah.
think we're 6 months away. They gotta hire the architect and start doing all this planning stuff and figuring out, because they might get there and go, hey, we need every piece of office space
Yeah.
for our people, and then it becomes a moot point.
Yeah.
But, and they haven't committed.
Let me
to-
respond with 2 points. At our first meeting, their committee at least, were sounding unhappy about the possibility that the entire lot would be covered with building and asphalt and maybe a hedge on one side. They didn't like that idea. It didn't appeal to them. And then second is, they were smart about this. They met with the county and with our supervisor before they bought back that property with planning and the supervisor to discuss general issues. And that's where they learned that they were going to need so much parking. And they did mention that they felt that particularly if the 2 districts cooperated in some way, that the county, they got the feeling, I don't know how explicit it was from Horsley's office, that there could be county funds to help realize something like that. That, it was going to be, a community meeting room, a community space, whatever, that there could be county funds involved. And the example of the Half Moon Bay Library was brought up. You know, the county lent, put out a big loan for that.
Which is now interesting to kind of their motives then, because if that cooperation's not there from us, then they might lose out potentially on some of that funding.
Yes.
Potentially.
Well, that's the
Yeah.
implication I got, but what do I know?
Yeah.
But, you know, they'd have to pick it all up.
Yeah.
I think they're gonna build what they need,
Yeah.
at least, and probably what they want, because I get the sense they're not, too worried about money. No, so,
Is this a harbor district or the fire district?
well, both of them.
Everybody but us.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know where to go from here, except that I would like to know if we have a feeling that we want to drop this idea now, or talk about it some more and maybe drop it in a month or 2 months, or really jump into it in a month or 2 months.
I'd say keep talking to them,
Mhm.
get more information. I mean, it's always
Yeah.
good to cooperate with other agencies, and if there's some way that it will serve the community better and be better, a good deal for us, let's keep looking at it.
Let me ask this, what would this district want minimally if we were going to participate in using the same building as the Harbor District? What, we need office space. I think that if the two districts do cooperate, that will mean a larger meeting room for the community than this will be in the mix, but what else do we need? I don't know. You know?
I would
We
say
need
that-
this
And,
and that.
yeah, it's status quo,
Yeah.
right?
That's what I mean, 2 or 3
Yeah.
office spaces and some filing cabinet area, and it's very minimal. That's what I say, they've got a much bigger
Yeah.
operation.
Does-
Until they do that needs assessment, I don't know how they can even, it's good that we're talking, obviously.
Mhm.
You know, they've got to really look at those numbers.
Yeah.
I'd also like to see that building reflect some of the vision that so many of the people who've been thinking about El Granada for a long time have, and that if there's a way to have even a little setback and something there that makes it more attractive, more than just a big building on filling up that lot, or a big building and parking is all that you have there. I think that's an important factor in terms of, that's our downtown, such as it is.
Yes.
And it's gonna interact with the park, so I'd like some thought be given to,
Underground parking, I think that's where,
and
that's
then
good, that's where,
that costs a fortune.
a fortune, but I think
And
that's also.
we can't
this-
afford to pay a share of the
Yeah.
underground parking,
Well,
so.
I mean, there's a lot of questions there.
Yeah.
If it's true underground parking, that's a very small lot, so you might be spending millions of dollars
Yeah.
for 5 spaces.
Yeah, that could be true.
Yeah, and there's also tsunami rules. I wouldn't want my car down under there.
That's true.
Pat?
I was just gonna mention briefly, you have one of the most precious assets, which is a parking lot right across the street from
I
that.
was about to bring that up.
Yeah.
And that could negotiate on meeting space access, that could really help them a lot.
Yes, and they have brought that up, and we've just seen the numbers that you presented, that it seems like there's a good majority of the people who have responded would like to see that parking lot improved and stay about the same size.
That's it.
And then if, and the Harbor District does this explicitly, their ad hoc committee has explicitly brought that up and said, maybe we can work a deal with the county on how much parking we need if we can count some parking places across the street. So,
Which makes that those parking places would not be available to park users or servers.
right, but their meetings are at night.
Not the office use.
No, I think they're just gonna have to recognize they have to put parking on site for their office workers.
One part of it too is the parking requirements are set by statute, so it's per square foot, not per
Use.
use, individual, however head count, however you want it. So
Yeah.
they may put a big parking lot in and have it have 25% usage.
Well, let's find out
Yeah.
more.
But yeah, I think it definitely even if we explore other options, the longer that we could stay engaged, I think the more that we could contribute in terms of all these I think at some point, from what Professor Tierney just said, we essentially are partners with them. To some degree, it's going to, the final, agreement, there's going to be some type of, whether it's a shared parking or something, we're going to have some relationship with them. There's going to be an overlap with Burnham and where that is. I think it's just, I think so. From that perspective, it's almost like we should stay engaged with them all the way through, even if it's just on a small issue. I think it becomes where the rubber meets the road is when they start asking how much it's going to cost and contribution of funds and how much, the square footage they need and all those things. That's where it might fall apart.
Mhm.
I think until that happens, I think, and even when that does fall apart, I think we're still going to be partners with them on other things. It just might not be the office space or whatever. So I think the longer we can stay engaged with them, the better until it's obvious.
I agree. Well, on parking, we have to also
Yeah.
consider the concept that they're going to use that parking lot whether we like it or not.
Yeah. So it's
So, I don't know, maybe we could designate some of their
Yeah.
spots and put up the meters. We'll see. Okay, Nancy?
From what it sounds like from the discussion, they need a lot of office space, and it could potentially cover the office space and maybe a meeting room. But you've now got, new data and that you didn't have before on what the community would like to see in a community center. And I'll just drop off the idea about potentially sharing that information with them if any interest in the building could take away from our ability to do a community center. Is it really a reasonable combined project? Or I think maybe that's another discussion for the board to have is as you have a chance to digest the community center data, how much do you really want to offer as a community center and mix that into, does it fit with the views of the Harbor District for what kind of space they're going to have?
Yeah, and they have to think about what even a small or partial community center would mean in that building, because then we're talking evenings and weekends and, Okay. Eric, well, I guess we're gonna have another meeting.
All right, well, we should have it scheduled by December at the rate we go.
Yes, yeah.
Well, it's the holidays, so it'll be February.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, things just slow. And that was, everybody agreed on that at our last meeting. As soon as November comes, everything at the
Right,
government
shuts
level
down.
slows down to a crawl. Okay, let's move to item number 4, consideration of audited financial statements for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2018.
Yeah, it looks substantially same as it did last year.
Thank you again, Parks folks.
And the year before, So probably where I would, see if anyone has any questions afterwards, probably where I'd start you all off is the management discussions and analysis. So that's right after this Fetchter thing, pages 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So if you turn to page 4, which has the first set of figures, don't go into the audit, stay at the management discussion and analysis.
Yes.
Okay. So probably some of the significant things your board would look at is sewer service charges basically stayed the same year over year, 1.27 million. So, and that's not to be unexpected because a real fluctuation in those is commercial usage, so, which fluctuates by water use. Moving down, if you look at the operating expenses, we pull out the SAM expenses. The big number there that's increased is the cost for sewage treatment. That went up about 15 or 16%. That's been the pattern at SAM that we've talked about at budget time and all that, so that's the one expense.
And that includes the cost of personnel as well.
Cost, yes.
Specifically for the.
Yes, because some of the other
treatment
projects are capitalized.
Right,
So.
yeah.
Moving down, the GCSD administrative general expenses, we were 165,000 higher than the previous year. I'd say 90% of that, if not more, is the legal costs for the lawsuit and all that kind of stuff. And we've talked about that before. I think Bill Parkin told us last month that they were up at $150,000, year-to-date for the legal costs for the Half Moon Bay lawsuit. So, other than that, our
I believe you
administrative.
said 170 through the end of June.
Did he?
Yeah.
Maybe I said.
Isn't that what he said?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a
Okay.
lot. Thank you, Half Moon Bay.
Yeah.
The infrastructure repair costs at the bottom of the page, that was the SAM IPS repairs and whatnot, all the stuff that came out of the spill, so. Flipping over to page 5, our property taxes keep going up, our share of that revenue, so that's a good thing. It's generally because of the increased property value, and then we also get that ERAF refund, which is some of that property tax is taken from us initially, sent over to the Educational Relief Augmentation Fund. If it doesn't all get purposed in that fund, it comes back to us. And we're one of the few counties, I think there's 2 counties in California that happens to. So we're lucky. That's about $250,000 a year that other districts in different counties don't get. So, and that's, I estimate that at $250,000 a year. I'm usually pretty close, but that's all dependent on how they do that matching. Yeah, so other than that, like I said, everything looks about the same. Our current assets are $4.22 million. That's a drop from the previous year because we did all those capital projects at SAM, which is what we wanted to use our reserves for. So beyond that, has anyone got any questions or comments concerning the audit?
I just have one, which is, I'd just like to point out that this is based on the 2017
Oh, yes.
SAM audit.
That's a good
Because
point.
they have still not completed the 17-18 audit, which is what this should be based on. So they just took the numbers from the previous year, and I asked Chuck about it, and I guess when they get the audit done for SAM, we will probably issue, or the accountants will
Well,
issue.
they'll note
a-
it in the next year's audit. So
Yeah.
we were waiting to do our audit. We're supposed to have it done by June of this year. We kept waiting for Sam, and finally I talked to the auditors, and I said, we have to do something. And I said, check with what Montero and Half Moon Bay did. They just grabbed Sam's assets from the prior year, put it in there, and noted that. So, but, we don't.
It's not the proper way to do it, but it's not our fault.
Yeah.
We did the
Yeah.
best we could.
And the last update I got from Kishin was that they still don't have a due date for their audit. So
Right.
they're still stumbling along there.
And I'm on the SAM Finance Committee now, and they are working away at it with the auditors, but it's just gonna take a while, so,
Well, right.
which,
We talked about, actually, the managers meeting, we talked about, and I'll take the fire for this because I brought it up. Might be worth talking to Mays, the Mays Associates, the people who were there before, who didn't get along seemingly with Beverly or the staff there. They're the people who've been intimately knowledgeable with these books for the past year, for better or worse. I think it'd be an interesting conversation to see straight from the horse's mouth what the problems are there. This stuff is too straightforward to keep stumbling along
What-
month after
Why
month.
haven't we heard straight from their mouth what the problem, isn't that, they were brought in,
Because
they were cut short before they got
Sam
their,
basically fired Mays. and
before
then-
they had their deliverable, their final.
Well, they were delivering all through the year
Yeah.
because they were doing the accounting basically, as
Yeah.
best I can tell, I don't know exactly. And then Mays took the step of writing a letter back saying, which as I joked about, nobody does that to their client or ex-client, but they were mad enough that they did, saying, no, we didn't get all this stuff from Sam, and this is why this didn't work. And I don't know where the
Well-
truth
And then
lies.
Sam responded that they weren't getting information from Mays that they needed, which,
Right.
so it was like, you guys did it,
Right.
yeah,
But
or
the-
or didn't do it.
there's more going on than that, which is that they made the decision to switch to the new accounting system, which the current SAM auditors feel is better and a better way to handle their finances.
Yes.
But they had a person on staff at SAM who couldn't do the job and finally left.
Because it's a proprietary accounting system, and I will again argue it
Okay,
is
but-
not better because we can't produce financials or an audit.
Right,
So
and
by
that may be
definition-
true, but the current auditors are in favor of them continuing with the transfer to this new system and working it out. Now they have a new person who's in charge of all this,
But.
and that person is doing a better job, and they are getting things sorted out, is what we hope is happening.
And I would guess that Mays was against that, had the opposite to say against the system?
We put,
Was
I don't
critical
wanna,
of it?
we're not Sam's
Yeah.
not implementing the system, it's been there for 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and you know, Dan Childs even mentioned it in one of his things. Again, the
Yeah.
proof is in the pudding, you can't produce financials. This is a system used by many cities,
Yeah,
I'm sure,
it's a
whatnot,
very well-regarded
but
system.
Sam is tiny and small.
Yeah. But the notion
We
of going
produce
back
audits for 15 years
to
before.
QuickBooks from this also has issues. So I'm not defending anybody. I'm just
Right.
saying there's a lot of complications as to why it's going on. And again, I do hope Dan Childs will help straighten it out because.
As do we all, right?
Yeah.
So, anyway,
And I'll
that's
say
why
one-
we're using last year's numbers with Sam.
Yes, but it's something for us to know that our audit is based on out-of-date numbers.
Yes.
And the last thing I'll
Well,
say
not
is,
our audit per se, but the SAM balance sheet numbers, yes.
yes,
Are
and
based
some
on
of
last
the
year's
numbers
number.
in our,
Yeah,
some of the
operating number,
numbers,
right.
the SAM numbers.
Right.
And then if you look at the management letter, it's very good, and there are no, there are no material weaknesses and no instances of non-compliance. So I
Yeah.
think it's a good,
It was
clean
a
audit
nice, clean letter, yeah.
for GCSD.
Yeah, I would just note it seemed a contrast between the statement that we're on a very sound financial footing, and then in item 9, the financial statement, there's an awful lot of red numbers on those pages. But, again, I don't know if that means anything, because this is not current data.
Yeah.
I know it gets talked about all the time, but what is the official treatment of the $1,085,000 advance to Montero in terms of?
Theoretically, they would have to pay it back if they met a certain growth, if they finally hit their usage at the treatment plant. It will never happen. Not in any, it just will never happen. That money is gone.
Okay.
Yeah, so it had a trigger that said if they hit a certain usage at the SAM treatment plant, we're not even close to that, we're at.
So have we done, but we haven't written it off though?
I do, so when I first got here, I actually booked that as bad debt, if you will.
Okay.
I told the auditors to.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's offset. So, no other questions, I need a motion for approval.
So moved?
Second.
No other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous? Okay. Item number 6, consideration of personnel system manual and salary schedule amendments. Should we
Yes.
didn't get to this in the closed, so
Yes.
we should we?
Table this for the time being.
Yes, okay. Number 6, consideration of sewer authority mid-coast side report.
The last meeting was canceled, so I don't think anything's happened. Though, we should say that there've been some major issues that Sam has had to deal with. The power outage required them to keep staff there 24 hours, and they had a major breakdown. What was the piece of equipment that had the major breakdown? There was a major piece of equipment,
Yes.
the solid waste removal process broke down, and their backup didn't work, and so, again, they had an emergency situation that they had to really scramble to resolve. So they've had a number of technical and equipment challenges there in the last month. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Yeah,
And they also, Kishan reported to us that that digester project
yeah.
was supposed to have been completed 2 or 3 years ago, never got started or completed.
Did we pay for it?
Well, we budgeted for it. We sent money over that way, but no. And I was laughing because I said it's kind of like the maze thing. Kishin called the contractor and said, you know, why didn't this ever get started? I thought, why are we calling them? We should know, but.
Yeah.
And they said, we asked for a bunch of stuff and we never got to go ahead and all this, so we put it on the back burner. So. We actually, we have a member agency manager meeting tomorrow with Kishin as well. Like I said, he's done a good job of keeping the communication lines open, so.
Good.
And how long ago was that go-ahead supposed to have been sent to the contractor?
Well, it was I can remember the original project, which was probably 7 years ago. And then this latest iteration was 2 years ago, maybe, something like that. And there's been a bunch of things over there, you know, the Vector truck, which we argued about, the mini backup truck, that's never been purchased either, which is fine by me because I don't think we need it. But that's kind of some of the stuff, the things we're going to try and resolve, you know, because this is, you know, we're sending money over there and it's not getting spent. Going back to the old ways.
And yet they say we're in.
They don't have enough.
They don't have enough and we're in arrears.
And we can't produce bucks, but I'm not worried.
So does anyone want to hear the report of what's been happening?
About?
The solids process?
Sure.
The solids process has been challenging for quite some time, and we had tried to hire a firm to clean our first digester, the solids process, in late 2016. For various reasons, this work was never completed, and the digesters are now experiencing a serious upset in that at least the first one is full of inorganic material that has clogged withdrawal and mixing lines and eliminated our ability to heat and mix the digester. This is an emergency situation that has required us to rent a special chopper pump to try and keep the first digester in use and also fall back on a second digester that has mechanical issues related to flanges that are not sealed and control of the overflow. The second digester is in better operating condition today than the first digester, but it too has significant operating challenges. We are working to develop an action plan to keep the digestion process in compliance with standard operating procedures and get the work performed that is needed. We have contacted the firm who agreed to do the work in 2016 and are working with them to get a firm price to clean digester 1 as originally planned and to determine their availability to do the work. We are also working to evaluate the entire solids treatment process to identify and develop a plan to restore the entire process train to an operable and dependable state. This will take a little more time, and we will keep you informed as we learn more, and will ultimately ask your approval of a contract to get the work done.
Okay.
I mean, I have to say, Kitchen is, it seems like,
That's a very nice email.
yeah, and there's, you know, he's
I mean, it's
keeping
nice
us
to be kept in the
posted,
loop with all
and-
this stuff, and he's fessing up, right?
and
Yeah.
this-
Didn't get it done, we've got a lot of inorganics.
He was
in
not
the
in
thing.
charge. Someone else was in charge when most of these problems really
Kind of
got
like that,
bad.
yeah.
And this is why also we need Dan Child there for a while to help get some of this stuff resolved. At least be an extra
Did that
person.
email go to the same board members?
Yes. But I didn't, it was not marked confidential, so I felt comfortable sharing it.
Well, we saw it too, staff.
Oh,
Manager
good.
saw it too, yeah. And
And-
that's getting the solids out of the plant, that's actually, I don't mean this comically, it's a big deal. It's one of the basics, you gotta get the solids out of your
Right.
plant and the water out of your plant. If you can't get the solids out of your plant, you've got problems, so,
Yes.
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's gonna cost us more money to get Sam
Well,
working properly.
they
but-
budgeted for 2 years ago or 3 years ago, so it's
Okay.
built in somewhere, so.
Somewhere, okay.
And it's not, it was a $175,000 project, it wasn't cheap, it wasn't crazy, but.
So do they have a backup generator?
Yes.
They do, but it doesn't always work, I don't think.
Diesel.
Diesel?
Yeah,
the
the
plant
diesel tank,
itself?
I talked to Tim
Yes.
about this,
Yeah.
and a big issue, because they couldn't run it. They
So,
couldn't-
but last time we had they blew out the front end electrical of the plant, you don't need the details. They didn't trust the backup generator on site enough, so they had to go rent a generator, just in case that one broke down too.
Oh, that's why I thought they had 2 generators.
No, that was a rental.
Oh. Hmm.
Okay.
And a fixed amount of fuel, it's fuel, so we're hard to.
Oh, so
Yeah.
so even if they have it working,
Right.
it may still,
It's not-
has a finite operating time.
Yes, that's right, that's the issue.
Well, what happens, yeah, I won't waste our time, but what happens with this stuff, especially nowadays, when you guys lose power everywhere, you know, same thing happens down with us. We've got 24 pump stations and 4 treatment plants. We have a generator for everything, but you run out of diesel, because everyone's fighting for diesel, right? Everyone's lost power.
Same thing.
It's shocking how many gas stations don't have generators to pump their gas out of the ground.
Oh.
It's astounding to me, because you can charge $20 a gallon.
Pay for the generator in one power outage.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of logistical stuff using generators, but certainly you want the one you have to work, all other things being equal.
A natural gas generator avoid that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and a lot of districts have gone to that if it's available, so, yeah.
Oh, and one last thing is this whole accounting thing, and they are still working on resolving outstanding balances, if there are any, between Sam and us. So, we'll see. Yeah.
Okay, consent agenda, which is item 7, approve September 19th, 2019 meeting minutes for us. Number 8, approve October 2019 warrants. Number 9, approve September 2019 financial statements. Number 10, approve assessment district distribution number 3-19/20. And number 11, approve a resolution to change bylaws regarding district SAM representatives. And
I have one question on the warrants. Wasn't the pass-through to the Taffron Bay $18,000?
No,
It was $8,000?
yes.
Okay, thanks. I thought I read it wrong. That's all.
Okay, and I was sort of surprised that you can change the bylaws on consent, but I hope it's true. So, we have
You
it.
can do anything on consent.
So do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, this is consent, no discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's done. Okay, item 12, reports on seminars, conferences, or committee meetings.
You received my handout on my report on the Special Districts Association Conference. I thought it was interesting. I learned a lot. I have some materials if anyone really wants to know more about any of these programs I went to. I did write a little bit about the legislative, the lobbying function, and it does seem to me that this is something we should be paying attention to. Last year, they tracked 757 bills and opposed 63, got 20 amended, and they supported 67, and 23 of their supported bills were on the governor's desk. And I saw just a recent update that almost all of them were signed. They talked about the housing crisis and how that's going to affect special districts, and some details of a couple of the bills that they were able to amend to reduce the impact on special districts. And they said the fact that the districts call their legislators, they're pretty good about that, means that they have very good street cred in Sacramento as a group that the members do the phone calls or write the letters. And the only other thing is, there's all these new compliance things on websites that we probably ought to take a look at our website at some point.
I've actually been working with our IT department on that.
Great.
Yeah.
And, you know, they have all the booths and everything, so.
They try and sell you.
I know, I wasn't buying, but I was.
Streamline, right.
But there's also some new requirements
Yeah.
that, you know, like you have to have a link to your current agenda on your homepage. Can't be under agendas,
Right.
stuff like that,
Yeah,
so.
and a list of the programs you use, if they start to get ADA compliance now.
Yeah, and one of the bills that's mentioned in here is that they wanted all districts to keep all records of all emails for 2 years, and.
It got vetoed, I believe.
Hmm?
I think that got vetoed.
It got vetoed, yes, which is partly because of, you know, lobbying from groups like special districts, and so it affected more than just special districts. So anyway, that was if anyone has questions, I brought actually some of the
I do,
materials.
I have one.
Yes.
I noticed that one of the sessions you attended was entitled District Dissolutions, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly by Colantuno, Highsmith, and Watley.
Yes, well, it wasn't Colantuno. It was
Different Colantino.
No, it's the same one, but it was someone from that firm, it wasn't him.
Oh, okay.
Did any local agencies get mentioned?
No, but it was kind of.
He's counsel for San Diego Lafayette, Michael Collins.
Oh,
Yeah.
It was pretty scary, you know. I mean, I guess, I was just talking to Chuck and he was saying, it's not that scary. But it does seem as if there is the potential to have state legislation and to eliminate special districts on occasion. So he was just went through the process of what they have to do. So it was good to know more about that.
and basically what they have to do makes it really difficult to get rid of districts, right?
Yes, it's true, because you, and then you can even have, if they do it, then you can have a vote to counteract it. But it sounds like a nightmare of a process if they decide to pull you into it. So, we want to stay out of that, is my bottom line.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you for sending me. I feel like, you know, I learned a lot. And guess who was there? Beverly, with her emotional support dog.
How nice.
We had a nice chat.
Yeah, she asked you how things were going?
Yeah, she was very pleasant.
The housing crisis is starting to affect special districts. I'm just going to throw this question out. The state is intent, of course, upon upping the building of new housing, and part of their program are making it much easier to add on or put second units on your property. Am I remembering this correctly, that people can now put second units on their property, and someone like a sewer district, you can't charge them another connection?
Under 750 square feet, you can't charge a capacity fee. So that, you know, it's a little bit of a money grab by the districts, quite honestly. It's not a lot of impact generally when you build a little mother-in-law hut. So especially like, you know, you look at, you built it here on one of these properties, it's equivalent to adding a bedroom to the house, so it's not a huge impact.
We put an apartment in our basement. It was permitted space. It had been a daycare center, and it already had a toilet and a sink, so they installed an illegal shower, unpermitted shower, and so we got a permit. We did not have to pay a fee here.
Mm-hmm.
The water company, however, made us put in the second water line in, and now that's no longer required.
Ah.
So I say it's a little bit of a money grab, honestly.
Well, I also asked that today because I talked to someone at the post office who is currently drawing plans and actually getting construction going on 35 second units in our district.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
And when you start
A
talking...
contractor, you're saying?
Yeah. Not a building contractor, but he's doing design drawings.
Okay.
And he's on 35 of them, and that's...
In our district?
In our district, and that's one guy.
That goes
One
to
person.
show you right there.
You know, if we get
Crazy.
hundreds of second units at some point, it's got
Well, it
to...
makes an impact, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gonna be the biggest, ADU is gonna be the biggest word over the next 2 years in every community, and I mean, that's gonna be.
Well, and a lot of this, you know, they play the game. They pass a law that says if it's under 750,
Yeah.
now there's a lot of 745 square foot second units, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we already did item 13, the Parks Advisory Committee. Item 14, obviously, Bill Parkin's not here, that's the attorney's report. We'll go to number 15, the general manager's report.
I've got nothing further except my meetings are recorded on.
Number 16 is administrative staff report. Yeah, there were no applications. There was one permit, and there were no hookups, and even the best, though, is at the bottom, there were no repairs this period.
But that will change next month, we have one.
Oh well. And we obviously don't have an engineer's report.
I'll just report that I gave John and Rainer the go-ahead to start the design for the first CIP that we talked about last meeting.
And so that brings us to number 18, future agenda items.
Can we get some information? I just discovered that, or just was told that the Dunes Beach project is within our district.
Yes, the one that's.
Yeah, and I'd just like to know what the legal, you know, what our options might be for.
That would be, a couple hundred ERUs, I think.
What project is
The
it?
Dunes Beach project, the one that's being
It's
proposed.
a 227-room hotel, a, 127-unit RV park,
General store.
a general store.
Where is it?
It's right on Highway 1.
Seahorse Ranch, behind Seahorse Ranch.
Tree is in there.
All the horses.
I love that tree.
Right, right next to the big eucalyptus grove that's a state park group camp,
Yeah.
group
Yeah,
campsite. out.
Sweetwood.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sweetwood, yeah.
Well, that's planned urban development, so I'm surprised we're able to go there, out there.
Yeah, it's where Young Avenue is, and I saw a map today that showed at least a dozen separately owned parcels that are in there,
Yeah.
that they're gonna have to,
Coastside Land Trust owns,
yeah.
but only like 5 or 6.
And the Coastside Land Trust has, according to the Committee for Green Foothills, has offered them market rate for those 47 acres, and they said no, the developers want to develop it. So that will be a big deal, and a long fight.
Yes.
So I'm just curious to know, so I am informed, because there's going to be a lot of talk about that
I
project.
just gave you all the article that was recently in the paper.
I know, but so what I want to know is, what are, you know, I know we can't just arbitrarily say no, so, I know, but yeah, just no big deal, but just like to be really clear so I understand what.
We have not received a referral on that yet, and a project like that is so big, we would definitely get a referral when it gets into the
Oh,
plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, I just like, because it's going to be talked about a lot.
The other interesting thing about that is the location, they're obviously be putting all that wastewater directly into the IPS. And it's in the city limits, even though it's in our district. So maybe they will get some benefit.
Well, I wonder if it's gravity there, the IPS.
No, I think
That's the force main.
it's towards,
Yeah.
Where does it go to Forest? At the
Somewhere
Arroyo?
near-
Miramar.
Yeah, it's somewhere
I
near
think they're
there.
gonna be on, Fort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they won't be.
Yeah. Well, they're certainly not going to pump it up to Portola.
No.
Okay, anyone have any comments on future agenda items? We have 11, and
We need to be thinking about when we want to do the next follow-up board discussion of Burnham Park. So whether it's
I did add 2 items.
October.
Burnham Park discussion
Will
of,
it be ready in November?
Are we having a December meeting?
I
That's the
don't
first
know.
question.
It generally depends. It's not a very popular meeting for anybody.
So,
if we have things to do, we only meet once a month. So.
Yeah.
It's the fourth Thursday in December,
maybe-
it's the 26th, so.
I
No,
don't
it's
think
I don't
the,
think
it's
we're
the
having a
19th.
meeting.
No, it's the 19th.
The 19th.
Oh, they move it up to the third?
No, it is the 3rd.
Is it the third? It is
Yeah.
the third.
And sometimes it presses up close.
sign them, sign them, and give them a charge.
Considered close.
So let's decide that on the next agenda.
Based on maybe how the meeting goes too. Maybe based on how the meeting goes, if everyone's gonna go and
Matthew,
consensus.
do you have a meeting?
Oh, the regular meeting is now adjourned.
Key?